We get lots of telephone calls and queries every day from parents and others who are asking about their children who stutter and asking what they can do to help. And so what we would like to do is present you with some of the tips that we would like to give to parents about how they can help their child who stutters.
One of the most important things we want you to know is that there's no evidence that parents cause stuttering. Ways that you talk with your child haven't caused this problem, but there are lots of ideas and things that you can do to help your child.
I think one of the first things that parents often ask us is, I know that my child should slow down, but I don't know how to help him to do that.
Although we might be tempted to say to the child, slow down, take your time, maybe that's not going to help the child because he might get the message that what he's doing is wrong. We wouldn't want him to think that. He might also be just thrown off of what he's trying to say if someone interrupts him and says slow down. And so what we can do as an adult talking to that child is just adopt a really unhurried manner ourselves. So appear very calm, even if maybe the child stuttering is making you feel anxious, trying to have a very calm demeanour and slowing down our own rate of talking with plenty of spaces between what we're saying, using pauses to just give ourselves time to think, give the child time to process what we're saying, and really make the whole thing as unhurried as we can in order to give the child the message, there's no rush, I'm not rushing, you don't need to rush.
So we know that children do need a lot of time to talk, to think through what the answers to questions are or what sort of ideas they want to tell us about. So perhaps one of the better ideas, if you're trying to help your child to take that time, is to model a slower rate of talking as well. So the pace of life, yes, but also when you're talking to your child, have lots of pauses, take your time to reply, ask one question at a time, let them finish.
I think one of the things that seems to help parents slow down the pace overall is to think about pausing more often, actually. Not saying too much at a time, but leaving plenty of pauses in the conversation, because that kind of slows the whole pace down. Yeah. And it allows children time to think and to work out what they're going to say in response to that.
Even though you may feel rushed, if you can convey, we're just going to take our time, we're not in a hurry, those kiddos are going to follow your lead.
It's really natural for parents to ask their children questions, and I think sometimes they think that's a really helpful thing to do because it's going to encourage them to talk, which will help their language development. But maybe for the child who stutters, that can be a bit of a difficult thing for them because being bombarded with questions sounds a bit like you're not going to have a lot of time to think about what you want to say in your response, and maybe some of those questions could be quite hard to answer to because they're quite complicated questions. So maybe it's helpful for parents of children who stutter to think about the sorts of questions they're asking.
I think sometimes we jump on one question with another question. If the child's taking maybe a little bit longer than we might expect for them to come up with their response, and so we think, oh, we better ask the question in a different way, or maybe they didn't understand or they weren't listening. And instead I think to just take that pause time and allow the child time to respond versus thinking that it's, I've got to jump in there and ask 3 more questions right behind it.
Yeah, sometimes we're tempted to ask those very open-ended questions like, how was your day today at school? Which leaves the child kind of thinking, oh crumbs, which of all those things that I've done today am I going to talk about first?
And I think the other thing we sometimes do is we'll ask a whole series of questions without giving the child the time to respond. So maybe if you do ask a question like, what did you do today that was fun? You make sure you give them plenty of time to think about what they want to say and then to say it and make sure they've really finished before you come in with something else that you want to say.
And sometimes too you can turn it around so that maybe what otherwise might have been a question turns into more of a comment. So if you want to find out what they had for lunch today, then saying something like, I had soup for my lunch today. I wonder what you had. Might be an easier way for them to manage.
Or sometimes you can just say, I had soup today.
Yeah. And see what happens. Really listening to children is a really important skill to use with all your children, actually. In fact, as adults too, we like to be listened to. So really listening is a really important skill, and I think that one of the ways that we can indicate that we're really listening is particularly to stop for a moment what you're doing and give the child your eye contact. Show them that you're looking, because that helps them to know that you are actually listening to what they say at that moment.
I think also that if the child's talking to you and they're stuttering, you can get very focused on how they're talking and their stuttering and the struggling that might be going on. But actually, what might be most helpful for that child in terms of how you're responding is if you switch your focus into what they're saying and just really focus on listening to them and the words, their message they're trying to get across to you, and responding to that. So if they're telling you something that's upsetting, you know, that you would reflect that in your face. If they're telling you something that's exciting, that you would show your pleasure in it too. So just listening to the content and not how they're saying it. And yes, with full listening and eye contact that shows that you're really interested and you really want to hear what they have to say.
One of the things I often do will check in with myself, and it helps me to think about making eye contact and smiling and be sure that I'm breathing. And I find that to be really helpful in relaxing my overall posture. And I think then that it makes me appear more relaxed as well.
And I think the other thing to say is that you can't listen the whole time, and you especially can't do this high quality listening the whole time. And just because your child stutters, that doesn't mean that you have to try and listen. And you certainly shouldn't be pretending to listen, which is something we would all do. That it's okay to say to your child, I can't listen right now. I'm really busy. I've got to concentrate on the route I'm on right now, driving the car, and you have to hold on for a bit until I can listen to you.